series on fire. And today we're going to talk about Moses and the burning bush. But first, Vicar, we talked about the burning sword, or the flaming sword last week. That's a big jump from Genesis 3 to Exodus.
Yeah.
How did we get there?
Let's talk about how we got there. So, last week we talked about Adam and Eve and how God created these first two people and put them in this beautiful, perfect garden. But instead of obeying God in what he told them to do, they disobeyed him and so were kicked out of the garden, committing the first sin. They were then kept out of the garden by the flaming sword, which we talked about last time. Well, since then, humanity has grown and developed and gone through a lot of stuff. And it turns out that humans do a lot of bad things.
A lot of bad things.
You may have noticed this looking around the world right now. It's kind of something humans are prone to do. After they've done a couple of bad things, and there was a flood, but we won't get into that because that's water, and we're talking about fire in this series. God chose one man, Abraham, or rather Abram, as he was first known, and he said, "I will make you a great nation. You and your descendants will be my chosen, holy people. I'm going to be your God, and you will be my people, and through you, everyone else will be blessed." Well, Abram listened to the promise of God, and God renamed him Abraham, and Abraham followed God. Abraham had a kid named Isaac, and Isaac had a kid named Jacob, who later became known as Israel. And Israel had 12 kids, who became known as the nation of Israel. Well, those people went to Egypt and started living there because there was a famine, and Egypt welcomed them in with open arms for a while. But then, after 400 years, the Israelites became slaves in Egypt. The Egyptians said, "Hey, here's some free labor. Here's some guys that are living here. Let's put them to work." So they enslaved the Israelites and treated them poorly. In fact, at one point, they became afraid that the Israelites would rise up against them. And so the Pharaoh of the time ordered that all young Israelite boys be killed. But one mother didn't want that to happen. Well, I think most of them didn't want it to happen. But one of them did something about it and put her baby in a basket of reeds. And this basket was found by a princess of Egypt who adopted that baby and named him Moses. This baby grew up as an Egyptian, but he always held on to his Israelite heritage. And when he saw an Egyptian beating an Israelite, he killed that Egyptian man, which was wrong of him to do. Because that happened, he ran away from Egypt, and he went into the mountains, where he met a man who took him in, and he met a woman, and he married her, and he lived happily ever after as a shepherd in the mountains. Until one day, while he was tending his sheep, something happened.
So there he is, minding his own business, living the shepherd life. And behold, he looks upon the mountain and sees a bush on fire. But the fire is not consuming the bush. So Moses, curious, what's that? Heads up there, and when he gets up there, out of the bush, the burning bush, the voice of God speaks and tells him to take off his shoes because this place is sacred, and then tells Moses that he is going to be God's instrument in getting the Israelites, the Hebrews, out of Egypt. And this is when Moses goes to Pharaoh, "Let my people go." But so much happens just in this burning bush.
This bush is burning. It's not being burned up, though. The fire is burning, but not consuming the bush.
And that has just to be fascinating. And I'm very curious, just out of sheer, how well could Moses see from a distance that the bush was not being burned with the fire? And it shows that, of course, this is a miracle. Of course, this is God. Of course, this is God working in his creation to do his will. And what's amazing about this is you got Moses arguing literally with God. "Moses, I want you to go and tell Pharaoh to let my people go, and tell my people to follow you." And Moses makes this great question. If I go to these people and I tell them that they're to follow me, and they ask, "Who told me?" Who do I say? And only God can say this. Tell them I am who I am. And tell them I am sent you. And that's what Moses does.
This is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he speaks to Moses. He reveals himself through the fire. Now, we talked in our first lesson that when God uses fire, it usually means one of two things: judgment or purifying and making holy through fire. So with God revealing himself to Moses through this burning bush, with God using this fire to come to Moses and reveal who he is, he says, I am who I am, or in the Hebrew, Yahweh.
Thank you for joining us for our midweek Bible class as we study God's use of fire throughout the scriptures. So the question at hand is, what is more predominant? God's use of judgment in this fire, or God's use of purifying and refining with this fire? I would love to hear your thoughts of why you think it's either judgment or purifying. Please leave it in the comment or reach out to us via email. I look forward to hearing and discussing this with you. God's peace and blessings.